I will say yes because the stream is live, and I will leave it at that. Right now, the answer is yes because
Situation.
yeah. So, I mean, I
Welcome to the
enjoy
Gordox Pub.
Gordox Pub. Ah, the drinks are free because they don't taste like anything.
The drinks are free because they're in your head.
Yeah. Welcome to the Gordox Pub, where your favorite drink is on an imaginary tap. Have as much as you want on the house. So what are we doing today, Rich?
Right now, I'm just laying on a border. So my wife really liked your Unjat.
Yeah. Cool.
She really liked the whimsical aspect of it. Which, that's her nature. So, she said she would like something like that. I think she was going to ask me for something, with that character until I said it was your character.
Oh. You know I don't care, right?
Well, yeah, but...
Okay, I'm just saying,
I would have assumed that. I wouldn't have done that without asking anyway, but I can do what she's wanting, but it's the type. It's like a typecast thing more than it's a one specific. I think it's the big, powerful looking monster doing something that's not monstery.
Ah.
So, there's comments. Let's see what the comments are.
Trey, the Diet Dr. Pepper is imaginary in the Gordox Pub, but not outside of the Gordox Pub. And hello, artsy Bible nerd. I wonder if artsy Bible nerd, is that a Bible nerd that's artsy? Or is it like an artsy Bible and that person's a nerd about it?
Well, I think it's more because he's doing a Bible comic.
And the answer is yes. Good answer. I like that answer.
Let's see. So if we get to color tonight, it'll be watercolor. I think it'd be a good break from the comic because I don't think we've gotten to a place where we're ready to continue on that yet.
Fine.
I did get some reference material for backgrounds and cities and stuff like that, but
I just thought, I think it's perfectly fine to talk about this on stream, I would hope. My feeling about it is that trying to come up with the ideas on stream overall is probably not a good idea. Like the ideas kind of have to be planned out ahead, like designing it on stream, putting it, and doing it little by little. I think is a good idea, just so people can kind of see where we're going. But yeah, I just wasn't liking the idea that if we don't have some kind of plan going in on a stream, it's just never going to get done. So I'm perfectly like it's a lot easier to revise that which is there than that which is imagined. You know what I mean? Like it's really hard to figure out what's working and what's not working if it's not on paper first. And then we can kind of, all right, so, and there were certain parts of, because even the more I thought about it, there was one part of that I was like, I'm not sure if I like that anymore. So, there's definitely room to work, but I'd rather have something written down to work with than possibilities.
Right. Well, you said you were having a rough week.
Yeah.
I've been having a rough week health-wise, so I figured I'd do something more whimsical, a little bit more fun this time. Give ourselves a break, not feel like you have to be pressured to do anything.
Well, Artsy Bible Nerd said, I personally like planning and penciling off stream and inking on stream. I think the planning part for what we're trying to do, we could probably pencil off stream. I don't know, but
yeah, it's not the drawing so much as the planning.
Yeah.
Like I don't mind drawing in front of an audience. I've been doing that my whole life, really.
Right.
But
it's really, we got to know we have to have a plan for what to write, so we got to have a script, I think.
No, we have to know what the story is. We have to know where the story is so that we can keep coming back to a place that we've established as home, right?
Right. Plus, I mean, some of that, like, I don't know the formatting that, like, we talked a little bit about this last time. I don't know formatting for a comic book script. Like, I've done scripts. I've written scripts before, but that's different than a comic book script.
It is.
And so I really don't know the formatting aspect of it. And
well, what you don't know is really the key phrases, because you do know script's a script to a point. It's about communicating. So it's about you either letting me know, it's about you being able to let me know what your thoughts are. But there is a certain format and certain key words that I'll be looking for while I'm formatting,
And some of that stuff though
is formatting while I'm drawing.
Right, but I'm learning some of that at the same time. So it's again better to start off like, all right, I put together something that I think this is a section that we were kind of talking about. It's one I had an idea for, and some of it was really vague, on purpose on my end, because I'm like, I don't know how much you want me to dictate what something looks like when I'm not the one doing the art. Which is also why when we looked over it, I was like, because you thought part of it could be done way faster than I did, and I'm like, okay, like I figure it if you know how to do it better than I, that's fine by me.
See, just because you've got limited. We've got a limited amount of time to establish some stuff.
Right.
And like, if you're imagining a 3-page story, you can't take a page to set up. You can take a couple of panels. And like, it's not a 3-page story, but it is kind of. And that's one of the difference between writing prose and writing this type of script is that in prose you're looking to set up a lot of stuff that's going to get set up visually.
Yeah.
In the comic.
Well, yeah. But even like some of the character design stuff, I was just like, the only character that I really named in the entire thing is one we've never talked about, and he's never named on the page. He's only named in the script, simply because I was tired of saying anything else.
Like I was saying, I really couldn't concentrate very well. And I knew it ahead of time. That's why I was telling you I can't concentrate very well.
Okay. But I mean, that's just kind of one of those things where I was saying that
where I was saying the Western bit. Well, you said keywords that are Western keywords: gunslinger, duster. You know, moving the duster aside. Now, that said, I don't have a problem with that aspect. If that guy, because nowadays people dress like cowboys.
Well, okay, so
I just don't. I have a problem with that aspect. I just didn't know if you were.
Well, okay, so
planning something different than we had talked about.
No, I don't think so. But at least not in my mind. I don't think it's different. But in cinematography, there's a thing called a cowboy shot, which is really what I was getting at. And the cowboy shot is that it was made iconic in westerns, in spaghetti westerns, where you have that shot. You can see the two gunmen, but you see the one off in the distance, and you see normally the main character's hand by his gun at his hip. And it's a lower angle, but you can see what the person's looking at, and he's armed. But they've used that in they've used it in the Han Solo film. They've used it in The Matrix.
I mean, for what our purposes is, it's just called a low angle shot.
Okay, well, that's where I know it from.
You're just framing it. You're just framing it with the guy in the foreground.
Right. So I could kind of show that. I mean, I'm trying to hint that there's some possible violence, and you kind of know that it establishes that we're following someone, or that they're ahead of them, or whatever. So I liked what the shot does, which is why. And I called it the gunslinger because I couldn't think of the name cowboy shot, which is stupid because that's more my background. But I figured if I said that, you'd know what I was talking about. Or at least
if
get
I
close.
Had a clearer head, I probably would have,
but so you understand kind of what I'm getting at. Like it's not a, yes, it was made famous by westerns, but it's not necessarily a western, because it does, I think, do some things. But in all honesty, like even that, I was like, I'm not sure how much direction Rich is going to want. So this is how I would do this one particular part. But I'm like, if you decided, I want to do it some other way, I wouldn't say shit about it. I'd be like, all right, cool.
If on the first page, that's the most important panel to you.
Yeah.
If you really, really want that shot because it really speaks to you for something.
Yeah.
And you want to make it an important part of the scene, then go ahead and direct as much as you want to. We just need to be clear because, like, you said gunslinger, and I was like, well, wait a minute, gunslinger? Are we doing a Weird West thing right here? Like, I'm not opposed to doing a Weird West thing. We can mix anything into it that you want to. I just didn't expect it, so I was kind of surprised by it. And like I said, my head wasn't really clear. It's not really super clear now, but it's clearer than it was Sunday.
Part of that was like I was thinking about that, and I was like, I really don't like doing this on Slack because
I was gonna say something too that like I know the benefit of Slack is that Jake is there, right?
right,
And I was gonna say something like in a message to say that we could talk on Discord anytime you wanted to. We don't have to worry about me being there for Slack.
yeah.
Then I realized you probably wanted to be there for Slack because Jake was there. So
Well, I mean, I liked I mean, he had some good points, and like
and he's
usual.
coming at it from an observer. He has no clue about comic books. So
Well, that's true, but I mean, it was really. I mean, some of the stuff he pointed out was like, yeah, you're right.
yeah, that's what
You're
I'm
right.
saying. He's got a completely different point of view.
Yeah, because like, so we might not even go with this, and I understand that, but and we're going to be talking about stuff no one else is seeing on stream, and I apologize for that, loyal viewers. Sit back, have a drink, and be bored. I don't know. But that thing where the contact was already already part of the caravan. Part of that really didn't make, like, as Jake pointed out, didn't make a whole bunch of sense. And I thought, oh, yeah, that's a good point. That's one of those things where by having the script ahead of time, we can kind of look at that and be like, oh yeah, that doesn't make sense. And it's really helpful to have, someone who isn't necessarily in on it to know that,
Yeah, because it doesn't matter what format. If you're telling a story, you're telling a story.
Right. But it's kind of nice to have someone who's not, like I'm like this. Like it is right up in my face. I know what's going on. I know what's coming. It's hard to step back and look at it, which is why it's nice to have Jake, because he's pretty far back. He can't really get any closer. So I like that. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know if I like doing this on Slack because it takes so long. Even like both of us type pretty quickly, but it takes so long to explain. No. What I meant was, or it's, like that cowboy shot thing. I'm like, it's not about it being a gunslinger. It's just about being able to see that he's got a metal hand, and he's armed. So he's something of a he's dangerous at the very least. So, and you can see what he's pursuing, which is why I like I just thought that was a good design that I think would work for that. Again, it doesn't have to be that way. There are other ways of doing it. All kinds of ways to walk a dog, skin a cat, or eat Chinese food. So, a lot of that stuff is pure suggestion. But it's easier to have it on paper so we can talk about it in detail. Like, it's like, this, like what Jake did, kind of, it's like, this part's not working for me. Oh, okay. And, some of the stuff that was vague, like I'm going to talk, I don't care. I'm going to talk about this character idea because I don't see any reason not to. But I kind of like the idea of a character who is almost, how RoboCop in the new one, like he has like a hand in his head, and that's basically it. Like that's all that's left of him. That's kind of how I feel about Mr. Model. He's mostly not there, which is why he has that package, which would be a nice design feature for that setting. I thought it was interesting, and I thought would show kind of a twist, which I thought foreshadowed things later on. That's just me. But overall, the character idea was fun, so I was just like, all right. But I mean, because even when I got done writing it, I was like, this is not as action oriented as we had discussed. So before I
right.
started
Because
it, I
the
was like,
beginning was just a set piece to get you into it.
yeah. And that's ultimately, if you wanted to, like, I don't know if you'd want to say it, but if I was going to say, was I successful 100%? No, because I wanted, like, there's some action. There's way more, I think, intrigue and setup than there is action, which maybe that's okay. But I also kind of thought, maybe we could do with some more action. And
I don't know if there was a lot of intrigue from my perspective. Like I said, I have to reread it because like I wasn't really there with it the whole time. So,
well, part of what I was thinking also, like, because Jake was like I was misdirecting to some extent on purpose. Um, there are things that are kind of hinted at but never officially stated to try to get the reader to go in one direction. But technically, I don't think anything was ever contradicted. So it's one of those things. It's like, oh, I said this, and this is literally what's right there. But you weren't necessarily going to know that until you get to that part. So I wasn't necessarily upset that Jake was like, he was thinking the blood runners. He was thinking the blood, that this denoted blood runners. And I'm like, that's kind of what I wanted you to think, but I never said that. So that's just kind of what I'm talking about. Like with some of the stuff. And also, like, part of me was kind of like trying to condense. So, like, when you were like, oh, I think we could do this in way fewer panels than what I wrote down, I'm like, sweet. Let's go ahead and, if you can do it in fewer panels, I can do more. You know what I mean? So it's like,
right.
It's like the major objectives that I had, I met. I met all of them except for, I think, the action aspect, but I wasn't too upset with what the action that I had, I guess. But that was part of that's a space constraint. So, like, again, if you could condense some of that and be like, oh yeah, we got more room, then I think I could introduce more of the action. Although, I mean, I don't know. I suppose it's one of those things where you can kind of go back to it. I mean, it's not a finished product, so you can always go back and add or subtract.
Right.
So that's the nice part about, like, designing it.
One thing, I guess, like I think maybe you're putting too much weight on the action part of it. And I'm going to explain that because,
okay.
So you were saying, like, you didn't want it to be because of the nature of the type of story it is. It's a story about a guy who exfiltrates people from dangerous situations. And I think we had a disconnect there because, for me, if you don't want to tell a story, more than one story about people getting exfiltrated, well, then we're only writing one story. We're not writing a magazine. You're not going to write an ongoing book if you don't want to tell more than one exfiltration story. So, like, but the thing is, I wasn't talking about the importance of how I wasn't talking about the importance of how the line of events for him to get through from one point to another.
Okay.
Just the final part of it. You know what I mean? Like when you see at the beginning of a James Bond movie, you don't see all the shit that he went through to get that final part. You just see that final part because that is the action point or the point of that part. It wasn't necessarily to go, well, he did this step and that step and that step. That's another thing that you can do with comics that it's probably going to be very liberating for you eventually. That, well, because you can really skip all kinds of stuff. A lot of the stuff that happens in comic books happens what's called in the gutters, which means in between the panels.
Oh.
You're only taking snapshots of the action. You're not going to show every little thing that happens.
So
And it'll be liberating later on when you realize that you can just jump around a little bit.
well, part of that I rely upon you to decide what goes where. Which is why literally, like when you said we could condense this, I think I had like 4 panels at least. And you're like, oh, we can do this in 2. And I'm
Right.
like,
That's exactly what I was talking about. You get the establishing shot. You took, I think, 2 panels to establish them being in the city and then pulling into a closer view of that city.
Yeah.
But you can pull into that closer view of the city and start the action at the same time.
Well, and that's one of those things where I was like, definitely when I say, like, I am, how there are, like you talked about Alan Moore, like, his comic scripts are basically a novel and he expects every little thing to be on the page.
Right.
Which I don't know if that's true or not. I'm going by what you said. I assume that's what, it's true. So whatever.
Well, if you want, I can send you some stuff.
I trust you. I'm just saying, I am saying what you have said. I am not saying you're my source on that.
So basically, you're saying, if Alan Moore gets mad, it's at me.
Yes, exactly. If Alan Moore gets angry and says that's not true, you asshole, I'll be like, that was Rich. It wasn't me. But anyway, I think I could take Alan. I know I could take him. But
Did you say you think you could take Alan Moore?
Yes.
Well, with Alan Moore, you don't got to worry about physical combat. He's a sorcerer, remember?
Oh yeah. So maybe I can't. Dang it. But anyway, no, but so some of that. So you were. So yeah, like the thing with. No, you were saying you don't want to show. You thought that I didn't want to do more than one story of exfiltration, which is actually not what I'm saying. I'm saying within the same book, I don't want to hit the same beats. And I think the main storyline is big enough to have all the stuff that you wanted, but it's not big enough where I can do it twice in the same book.
Well,
and
I don't know about that because I don't know that you're thinking the same things I'm thinking.
Well, I might not be, and we'll find out, I guess.
Right.
Part of why I put stuff down on the page is because I wanted to get something that we can point to and be like, so it's less abstract and more concrete and becomes easier to pinpoint where we're going and what we're thinking. But it is not, in my opinion, a finished product. It's simply, this is kind of where I'm thinking. So part of that, because you were saying, you don't want to do a book about, because you thought I didn't want to do a book about an exfiltrator if I don't want to show more than one exfiltration.
Well, yeah, because I guess maybe I'm confusing what you mean by story beats with what has to happen for an exfiltration.
So, as I understand an exfiltration, as I looked it up, yes, rescuing people out of hostile situations is definitely part of it, but it can
Well,
also
that's
just
it
be,
for me.
oh, well, that's not it for me, and it's not it for any dictionary that I looked it up because I thought maybe I have it wrong because that's part of it. That's one of the definitions, but it also talks about getting information out of places, and it talks about being, it's not. It's generally speaking not supposed to. I mean, you're a small force, and we have a force of one. So going
Actually,
in,
there is more. There's just one guy that we're following.
well, okay, but I was trying to kind of keep it to him as much. Well, sort of, which is funny because it takes forever before I get to him. But so I felt like, technically this is an exfiltration. Um, and if anything, if really, uh, as it stands right now, there's one part of the dialogue I'm not super pleased with that I think could be made better. And if you can speed up some of the pacing from that intro so you can get rid of some of the stuff, the panels that I had planned out, then I would show more of him escaping. Like I would write more, like I would include more of that.
Now, see, that's what I thought you were talking about not wanting to do because you're going to be doing that later on.
So okay, so here's how I would.
And that was what my problem was, is that that's what he does.
Right,
So
but
how are you not going to show it if that's what he does?
I don't know. Well, yeah, I think the general plot of the book can be discussed, right? Like I can do like a one sentence summary of the plot, right? The general gist, at least the concept of the main story, right? Like there's nothing wrong with me discussing that, is there? Like I'm not talking any of the twists or anything like that.
Yeah,
I
that's
just
the
want to
only
say,
thing that matters is we don't want to ruin anything for anybody.
okay,
The stuff
so
that's going to be common, like what we've been talking about,
right,
is that he's an exfiltrator. We didn't keep that a secret, but we didn't really go into the fact that, or we're not going into what in particular he's exfiltrating each
yeah.
time.
So, right, so he's an exfiltrator, and we had talked about though that he was the main story is that there is a courier or something, a person that has to be extracted from a hostile place and brought back to a friendly place. Like that's okay. So when I think of the story beats for that, you have to show him infiltrating. You have to have, rescuing the person, or at least getting to the person,
Right.
and then you have to have
You have
them
to show him going through the danger of getting in
and getting
finding
out.
them and then getting out.
Right. And to me, so those are story beats that are going to happen in the main story, and they can
Yeah,
happen.
but those are going to be story beats for every single exfiltration. The only difference is that it's going to be adapted to each separate situation.
Okay, so when we look at, say, like James Bond, because you brought it up, and that's a good one. I like that.
Because that's just the ultimate example of that kind of beginning we were talking about.
Yeah, well, Mission Impossible normally does it too, kind of.
Not quite the same though.
Yeah, it's a little bit different because it's really more about just getting them. And a lot of them are just, I mean, they're really kind of egregious with the whole. We're doing this because it looks cool.
Right.
That's it. James Bond is close, but not quite that bad. But so,
well, it looks cool, but it makes it look like he's making the last split-second decisions to do it, and
right. So I get that. But a lot of times, what happens in the introduction has very little, if nothing, to do with the rest of the story. Or it's like you need to go escape from this place because you've got information. I mean, whatever. So I was kind of doing that. I mean, if you look at what's going on, I really am doing that.
yeah, I just haven't had a chance to look with a clear head, so
that's fine. But it wasn't a person, and I don't show him I didn't show him infiltrating. I've implied it all, and
right. And I wouldn't. That's what I was saying. Like you wouldn't be showing the infiltration or the finding of the person or the finding of whatever he's exfiltrating. You're only showing that last little bit where he makes that big twist escape, at the beginning.
Right. And I did not include that. I did not include the action sequence that happens in a James Bond opening where,
right.
They ski down the mountain and, they're shooting at him and he goes off a cliff and he's parachuting and,
and
all those things.
Exactly what I was saying. Like I can shorten that intro by a few panels so that it gives you a few panels to do that.
Well, that's fine.
We don't need all the mixed. We don't need all the slow information or all of the interchanges. We only need the last big ones. But I did like that you created that character.
Yeah.
And I think that character should be important to the story at some point later on, even if he's like your Belloc.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was kind of one of those things where
bounty hunter versus an extractionist or whatever.
And also, because I was really worried about the one part I was really worried about, nobody mentioned. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that it wasn't as controversial, apparently, as the cowboy shot. But
well, that and I didn't have a clear head, so
that's fine. Which is
I may find that what you're talking about later on.
Right. Oh, I completely understand that. It's just one of those things where it's like.
I also am not going into it looking for reasons to say that it doesn't work. I'm going into it looking for reasons that it works.
So, one of the things, and to some extent, like we had kind of talked about this, and we've talked about it tonight a little bit, how it's not like the guy's doing it by himself. Like he does have some kind of support network.
Right.
And so I titled the file. I don't know if I put it on the actual script. I mean, it's the script name has it.
Oh yeah, I saw it. And if that's not taken, that's a good name. So that might be the thing. Yeah,
I could not find that name. My son thought it was stupid. I was like, I have a son who I love him. I mean, I love both my sons. But one of my sons,
I to start a conversation.
Well, one of my sons has this tendency that I can run something by him, and he tends to focus on what's wrong, like just finding something that's wrong with it. And it's a good, I like listening, I like getting that in advance from someone I love, because I can see if it's I can weigh it sooner and see if I really think that's a good criticism, because sometimes he has some really good criticisms, and sometimes there have been times where he's like, oh yeah, that's basically this, and it's some franchise I didn't know about, and I was like, well, damn it. So it's one of those things where he's a good resource, but I had run that name by him, and he was like, it seems a little on the nose, and I was like, on the nose of what? What? He's like, what? So it's like some secret organization? Yeah. Like, so far you're telling me all the reasons why this title works. Like, it doesn't exactly tell you what's going on, but it kind of gives you a good hint. And yes, we're focusing on this one character, and we can keep doing that. Or if we want to branch off, technically it's all there. And I was like, oh yeah, that kind of works. So, but that was like I got this random idea, which I don't know how I'm going to use yet, for a sword. And I told him the idea of the sword, and his first thing was like, oh, that's just, he told me some sword from some video game. And I'm like,
well, if it's a magic sword, guess what?
well, here's the fun part.
A lot longer than video games.
I would argue it's probably technology. It's in my head, it's technological, but in the end, it's basically magic anyway. But I haven't seen this particular setup. Like, I've seen it get close to this particular setup, but I've never actually seen this particular setup. But he was like, oh, it's just basically like this. I'm like, no, it technically isn't. But it got me thinking even longer. So I'm going to put this out in the world. It's on here. It's timestamped. I don't care. So the idea was a portal sword. So the blade isn't a blade. It's a portal. And my idea is a portal to just...
So it's not really a sword. It's a key.
Well, except for, like if I take it and I swipe it down and the blade were to like hit your arm, nothing can stop it because it's not really there. But once you get the flat part of it, that's a portal. So it removes that part of what it's cutting through because it sends it to the other side of the portal. So you can sever anything. Like, it is an ungodly powerful weapon. And I've never seen one. It's kind of like what they do in Marvel, where like in Infinity War, I think, you have that. I forget the guy's name. The big bad heavy that comes down and gets his arm cut off because they close a portal while he's reaching through it, and they close the portal, it severs his arm. So it's kind of like that, but it's an actual blade you can wield versus portals. So that was my idea, and he poo-pooed it. Whatever. I still think it's a good idea. But then I was like, what if you had a crossbow bolt that instead of having an arrow and an arrowhead?
Were you talking about Thanos?
Huh?
Were you talking about Thanos?
No, I don't think it's. Hold on, I'll look it up. I'll look up the guy's name. I think I know what it is. But if I don't get it on the first try, yeah, I was wrong. It's the guy that comes down with Ebony Maw. Ebony Maw is the guy that looks like Squidward. And God, what's the other guy's name? Oh, well, just look up Infinity War. I don't know why I'm... Infinity War film. That'll give me close enough. I'll be able to see it, and I'll tell you what the guy's name is. Just because that's got to be the easiest way. It's the guy that has, like, the weird, like, axe claw thing that... Yeah. Hurry up. Let's go. Peter Parker, T'Challa.
In which?
Hold on. I'm pretty sure yeah. It's in Infinity War. When Ebony Maw comes down in New York, and Tony Stark says, Earth is closed today, and the Squidward guy, Ebony Maw, turns to his big heavy and says, like, he bores me, fetch the stone, and he's coming, and he looks like, all right, the Hulk should be fighting him, but the Hulk won't come out, so Tony has to take care of it. That character gets his arm cut off, and I can't remember his stupid name. And so far, no one in chat is telling me either. And IMDb is being nearly useless because it's not showing me all the characters. Infinity War arm cut off. We can do it this way. If my computer would ghost. Dear Lord.
I've got to step away for a second real quick.
Okay.
So when you find it,
I'll be here looking up. I will. I am positive everyone will know as. But anyway. All right. Yeah, it's Cole Obsidian. That's his name. I should have known that because I was looking that name up. Yeah. So I'm going to put him up on screen here in just a minute in a way that hopefully I don't get Rich in trouble. Where's the good picture? Really, really good picture. Now that'll work. Open image in new tab. And then do that and present. Alrighty. And there it is. Cole Obsidian. Oh, that's probably a better picture. Yep. There we go. Anyway, he gets his arm cut off by, I think it's Wong, closing the portal. And it gave me the idea for actually having a sword that would do that. I don't know if that's supposed to be a hammer. I don't know if that's supposed to be an I don't know what that thing is. It's kind of a claw thing that shoots. It's got a chain. I mean, it's all kinds of weird. But, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, so I don't know if you can hear me, Rich, or anyone else, but I'll talk because I'm tired of the silence. Oh, you never put any music on. That's okay. So after I had the idea for the sword that would do that, and I had an idea for a shield that should just be a portal, you know, instead of stopping the blow, it would just, you know, you'd fall in it. It'd be done. Don't have to worry about it as much.
Is what?
Well, so I had the idea for the sword that's be basically a portal, so you can sever people's arms, legs, heads, whatever, instantly. But then I also thought a shield that's a portal would also work well because, you know, if you're shooting at me and I stand behind my shield, a regular shield can be penetrated. But if it's a portal, you're literally just falling into a hole and never being able to reach me. Like, it's a great idea. Like, once you've established portal technology, there are things that people have not been doing.
Well, the problem is that it makes it difficult to. If you've got something that's all powerful,
Oh, I know.
it needs flaws. It needs to be able to be gotten around.
Well, I was just running through some ideas with my son, and he was, just again testing the waters to kind of see where any major flaws are, or if it's something that's already been done that I don't know about,
Right.
So then I had the idea of if you had a crossbow bolt, but the tip is actually a portal. And I said that the end of the bolt should be the other side of the portal. So when it hits you, it starts shooting you out the side, or hitting whatever, it would shoot out the back, which I just thought sounded kind of gross and nasty, and it would plug up a hole eventually, but it's not like it's connected anymore. It'd be severed. And my son's like, why don't you just put it out the side? So if it hits your chest, it shoots stuff into the chest, which does more damage. And I thought, oh, that's a really fun idea. So just different things. I mean, again, I don't know how I would ever use it. But it is something, it's just one of those things you start playing around with. And it's just like, oh, let's run this idea by other people, see how, if it has any traction or whatever. And then see if you want to work on a story with it. But so that's kind of what the story, the name of the story, that's why I ran it by my son to see if it was, because he'll kind of pick at it. Like he'll probe its defenses. And sometimes I get a little grumpy about it because, it's like, you don't like anything. But in reality, he does me a good service. But the title of the story, I was worried about what you would think about it. Because in my mind, you don't call a James Bond book necessarily. You don't say it's James Bond. It's, The Spy Who Loved Me.
It's really what the adventure is about.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. And I know I had talked.
But we're not. Oh, sorry. But we're not writing James Bond.
Right.
And what I mean by that is that we have to have a title that we're going to keep coming back to.
Well, yeah. But that's
exactly. We can't name it after the adventure and then the next adventure, change the title because people are going to be looking for that title.
Right. So I thought of it. I really thought long and hard about that title. Like, I'm not necessarily like, it's that title or nothing, but I'm not there.
I don't have it up. So like, if you want to put it in the private chat, because like I said, I didn't have a clear head. I just remembered that I kind of liked what I saw of it, but.
So I put it in the private chat. And that's how I see it being written, but it could be spelled as two separate words.
Yeah, see, I like that. It feels very spy oriented.
Great. And that's kind of what I wanted. I thought,
I'm agreeing. I'm just telling you, I like it.
Sweet.
I think it feels very spy oriented, and it feels you gotta remove that.
Right, to remove what?
Down the bottom. What you were presenting, you did not remove it.
Oh. Well, it's not on screen anymore.
It's on my screen though.
Oh, okay. Stop screen.
There you go. So yeah, if you want it, if you like it and you want to marry to it, I'm good with it because I like it.
Okay, well, if you like it, I like it. I think that's what we're going to keep.
And that means that if you want to discuss it further, you don't have to be secretive about it because that would be the name of the book, right?
Okay. So, for those of you who are watching or might watch later, here's the unveiling of our name. I think we're going to go with Shadow Faction. And if y'all hate it, let me know. But
if y'all hate it, suck it up.
But I think it's a good name. I like some places where it might go. And
yeah, it's got a spy feel, but it also has the availability of having other elements that can still be employed with that name. We could have a fantasy element or a sci-fi element or whatever with that name still.
Right. Well, good, because that's sometimes those are the harder parts. Just finding a name that works, that hasn't been used, or because sometimes I can find a name that's been used all over the place, and it's like, well, as you pointed out, if it's been used all over the place, maybe you should keep looking. So, but yeah, if you like that, I'm down with that. I'm definitely down with that.
Yeah, it's a good name.
Good. Well, there you go. We've made some history right there on our channel.
We've made an advance.
Yes. So.
And we weren't even trying to.
Yeah, but some of this is a little bit more productive than what Slack. I mean, Slack was good for Jake, and I realized you were sick. And
yeah, that kind of makes it hard to be really valuable.
Oh, I get it.
When your brain's not, no matter what you're trying, your brain's not in it.
Yeah. So let's say that's pretty good. And it's also easier to. I mean, once we had something of a script, it was easier to say, "Oh, I think this part needs to be shortened, and this part needs to be expanded on." And like we've discussed things in ways that I think it's easier to do verbally than typing it all out. But I like the idea of
definitely
having
easier to understand the inflections.
Yes, that was part of it. Was like, man, I really don't like doing this because you can't read tone as easy. Oh, you can, but it's a lot easier to screw it up when you're reading.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to speak than write tone. That's for sure.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where, I like this better, but I also like having a
anyone
script.
who's ever gotten in trouble for trying to write a joke.
Oh yeah, yeah. Sometimes I want to be like, I kind of want to joke around in an email to a parent, and I'm like, no, it's too risky.
Yeah, right.
It's just whatever.
They are gonna get angry.
Yeah. Sorry you're not feeling well.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm feeling a little bit better than I was on Sunday.
Yeah.
Although I seem to be having repercussions.
Yeah.
yeah, so I came across some things that were some pretty interesting references
Did you wipe it
for
off?
drawing cities and stuff. So
Yeah. Well, that's good. That was the other thing. I was like, so I put a few descriptions in, but I'm like, I don't care what it looks like. Like the setting for me was not important at all. I mean, it's kind of important to show what's going on, but I'm like, how I want to do that is fine with me. Well, I guess I should say, as long as it shows kind of what we're going for, which I trust that you would do. So I can't imagine you doing anything that I'm just like, oh no, that's not gonna work. Like there was nothing important about the set. And it's not like you have to have. There was no set piece, so therefore there's nothing that I necessarily need. I guess. Like there's, oh yeah, this takes place on a boat, so that I can. It's like maybe it's a giant grounded or a giant like sea vessel that ran aground that's now a city state, which now that I'm saying that sounds kind of cool, but
well, and we've got plenty of room to add city states on.
well that's why I like the idea of city states. I'm like, oh yeah, because that way you can do whatever if you get a cool idea, new city state. So kind of like that idea. That's what I meant by like keeping opportunities available. And I'm like, all right. And some of the stuff when it comes to the artwork, I'm just like, whatever. If I don't have a story that I can think of that has to be in a certain place, then we've broadly decided this is kind of a cyberpunk / post-apocalyptic thing, and I think that's cool. And that leaves us a lot of places we can play around. But I wasn't really thinking about the setting. I was thinking about the other stuff. You know how you always say you don't you don't necessarily like listening to, especially anything with words when you're writing?
When I'm writing, yeah.
I started listening, because on Spotify you can look up. I have this, I can listen to the Knight Rider theme song and the Airwolf theme song, and just kind of put them on loop because they've got just a really good energy, and I mean, it's just.
I do that with movie soundtracks.
Yeah, I've done that with movie soundtracks too, but there's something about Airwolf's theme song and Knight Rider's theme song that just I really, really dig for writing this stuff. I just like having it on. So those are, because again, it doesn't have words.
If you're looking for the feel for the kind of futuristic cyberpunk, whatever.
Yeah.
One good one is Maze Runner.
Okay.
The music to that, it's got the danger sounds and the adventure sounds and the run sounds and stuff like that,
Cool.
That's one reason it sucks that I can't just play a playlist of what I want to listen to,
Yeah. I agree. Although it's kind of funny because
for drawing, and it's different than writing for me because I don't know why, but I don't have to. I guess because when I'm thinking about writing, if words come up in a song, they kind of come up in the story too.
Yeah.
And if I'm drawing, I'm not worried about words. I'm just worried about doing the drawing.
Well, that makes sense. But
that's all I can figure.
Now it's gone. Oh. I think it's funny because I don't know if Trey is still on there. He was on earlier. He's the one that talked about Dr. Pepper, and he's one of my students. And he comes on here quite a bit, which is kind of funny. Like, I don't know if he just finds it funny to watch his teacher streaming. I don't know. But I think it's kind of cool, though. Maybe he's just trying to curry favor. He's sucking up. I don't know. But I don't care. It's working.
It's working.
Yeah.
I really like this kid.
Well, then my students were like, do you even know that guy? And I'm like, well, yeah. They're like, well, like in real life. And I'm like, well, we talk in, real time. And we, it's like, but you guys have never like hung out. I'm like, well, he lives in Maine.
We're hanging out right now.
Yeah. It's like, we're hanging out as much as we can with the distance that we have between us. But yeah, it was kind of funny. They were like, that's not real life. And I'm like, okay, but he's a real person and he, whatever. Just kind of funny. Just the stuff that
like, so before the electronic age, we did this and we called it pen pals.
Yeah.
It just took a lot longer to complete a
conversation.
Thought. Yeah, right. There was a lot less interruptions.
Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of funny. But I think that'll. What I always find funny is, like, okay, so I've got two. It's not called. They're not doing their practicum teaching, which is the step before student teaching. So I guess this is more just classroom observations. I guess from like, I got two college kids that are going to be coming in and hanging out in my classroom for a few hours every week. All right. And I think that's a good, overall it's a good, but one of them had said that he was a creative writing minor. And I really, really, really wanted to, start asking him why. Which is funny because I have a creative writing minor, but I am more than happy to say it's a waste of money. That's my opinion. I think you can get all the education. Like if you want to creatively write, start writing and then start submitting, try to get published. That will be the best teacher you have. And, depending on your genre, find the authors in your genre because a lot of them are putting stuff up on, YouTube and Twitch and everything else. So go look at what they're saying about writing and figure out what they're doing, Like what we did with Brandon Sanderson, where he has his whole class. If you write genre fiction, you 100% should go look up Brandon Sanderson's videos on YouTube. They're amazing. And Orson Scott Card's book, The Characters and Viewpoint. You should, pick up a copy. That's what you need. Just different stuff like that. You
my
absolutely.
Information box. I've got a link to David Farland's Apex.
Yeah.
And I've got a link to Superstars.
Yeah. See, these are places where you learn from people who are actually making a living from it, not people who make a living teaching it. Well,
best-selling authors.
I won't say that that's 100% accurate, but still, they have made a living from writing. Brandon Sanderson absolutely 100% makes a living from his writing. The class that he teaches is just bonus cookies. Well, there are others that I think...
Kevin Anderson makes a living from his writing.
Right. John Brown makes a living from his writing. And he's great.
He's a teacher too, but what I'm thinking of is the guy who writes the Dresden Files.
John Butcher.
Yeah, I for some reason I couldn't get Jim Butcher's name.
Is his first name John? Because I know a John Butcher.
It's Jim Butcher.
Jim Butcher. See, I know a John Butcher. Great director. He used to be one of the teachers at the school. Great guy. But yeah, Jim Butcher. What about him?
He makes buku bucks, just like Brandon Sanderson.
Oh. Yeah. Those are the people you should be listening to, not the professor who makes most of his or her money from teaching and doesn't publish crap. Or if they publish, it's in these tiny little venues that don't pay and they don't really make any money. You know? That's my opinion, at least. I suppose if you have nothing better to do and you just, you want to have a deadline, creative writing classes are fine. But maybe it was just the fact that, I didn't have a good program. Even though some of the professors, I think, were really nice and they gave me some good ideas. But
I wanted to break down the literature.
It's when I'm more published than a lot of people who teach creative writing courses, and they won't let me, a college won't let me teach it because I don't have the right credentials. And I'm like, so I'm published, but not published enough. I'm educated, but I don't have a doctorate. All right.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, yes, because having a doctorate really makes you a better. Oh, wait, no, it doesn't. So, whatever. I suppose if I get famous enough, they'll ask me to teach.
When I was going to go to get a degree in history to teach history, and it required one history course and like 3 math courses. Like the only math you need in history is already documented. Other than that, it's basic addition, subtraction, or multiplication or division of what's already documented.
Yeah, so why do you need calculus?
Right. It's one thing if you're maybe getting into archaeology, but that's not just regular American history or any of that,
Yeah. But whatever.
It just amused me because I fully believe that the reason that they do that is so that those math teachers have a job, so that they can pay those math teachers.
Well, yeah, because very few people really want to study math because it's boring.
Well, I would say scientific minds would want to study math.
Yeah, but a lot of the stuff that goes on in science is done by a computer. You don't have to, I don't know. I just, whatever. I've gotten into this debate with my colleagues because I am of the opinion you don't have to have a teacher. And that makes me really unpopular with all the people I work with, as we're all teachers. But, I'm thinking Neil Peart had a high school diploma and that was it. But, when he was riding bikes in Africa, he carried 2 books with him. One was the biography of Van Gogh, and the other one was, I think, I want to say it's the Poetics. These are not light reading. So he was always reading. He was reading, really interesting stuff. And
there's a lot of science fiction.
Yeah. But he read a lot of stuff. And he didn't have to have a teacher teach him. Not that he doesn't ever get a teacher, because again, Neil Peart was one of the greatest drummers already on the planet. And when his common law wife and daughter died in the same year, and he kind of had a mental breakdown, which I would.
Right.
One of the things he did after kind of, he rode a motorcycle all up and down North and South America, basically. He eventually came back.
Anderson met him.
What?
That's how Kevin J. Anderson met him. He lost a bag out of his saddlebags in Colorado, and someone picked it up off the side of the road and waited for years and years, and then decided to have a garage sale. And Kevin J. Anderson stopped and looked and saw that it was Neil Peart's bag, and he, like,
Wow.
had a book of phone numbers in it.
Wow. I
And
did not
apparently,
know that.
like, it was a watch that his daughter had given him before she died was in that bag
Wow.
too.
That is amazing.
And that's how they actually met, because Kevin called him.
Wow. Well, anyway, so, but when he went back to California and he took lessons. He completely redid how he did drumming.
Yeah, he went to Buddy Rich and some of those other guys because he was tired of being called a metronome and he wanted to make it feel more organic, right?
Yeah. So I find that amazing.
Yeah, and everybody else wants to be the metronome.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't mind the fact, I mean, again, I'm just pointing out, if you want to learn something, it's not, I mean, logically, someone had to learn this without a teacher at some point.
That's what I keep saying. Colleges are built on collation of different people's stuff that they learn.
Right.
All the
So is
things
a
that we
library.
learn is from people learning it trial and error and sharing it with some other people.
But yeah, if a college is about collating knowledge and experience, so is a library. And if you
Right.
you know you can learn quite a bit. You know, I mean, and especially in this day and age, YouTube, for all of its flaws. Anyway, but YouTube and all of its flaws, like, I am probably going to have heart surgery eventually. In fact, my cardiologist has said it's the only way I'm getting out of this surgery is if I get hit by a bus first.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
just one of those things that's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. All right, cool. So, knowing this, I'm trying to prepare. And my house only has one bathroom, and it's upstairs. And I don't think after the surgery I'll be able to do stairs. So I got to put a bathroom downstairs. Now, it used to have one, but the previous owner tore it out, which is kind of a shell. And so I'm looking at it, and I'm like, all right, okay, I know my father put in a shower in our house when I was really little. So we're talking like 40 years ago or possibly longer. My uncle's a handyman, so I know he knows how to put a shower in a bath in a toilet. But I'm thinking, you know what? I have people I can call. I also have YouTube. I also have some books. And I've got two boys that are big and strong and not dumb. Some might even say they're smart. I don't know if I'll go that far, but I'm
I was
confident.
going to say, does that depend on whether they've gotten to know them or not?
Well, it's just one of those things where I think the three of us, plus my wife, and she's one smart cookie, we may not know what we're doing, but I think we can figure it out. And if not, I suppose I can pay someone, but especially with
if not, you know what's wrong with it, right?
Right. You know, it's one of those things. I mean, I don't know. I felt like, I was like, yeah, I think we can do this. Hey, John Terry said, and I think he's screaming this, you are so good at drawing.
Oh, well, thank you.
And then I think there are some smiley faces or some stuttering faces. I don't know. But we thank you, John.
Head, something like that.
Welcome to the Gordox Pub. Welcome to the Gordox Pub, where the drinks are free and the tips are appreciated.
Yeah, right. We accept all forms of cash.
That's right. Did you see that thing I posted in Slack about? I think I posted it in Slack. I think I should check to see if I actually did that. What if I never posted it in Slack and I'm just talking out my butt? There was an article my wife sent me about a girl got put on academic probation and all this stuff and lost a scholarship because, according to her, because she used Grammarly. And
she used Grammarly?
Right. Because I did not put it on Slack. I put a different video on Slack. That was more about YouTube analytics and this guy Warren Smith and his channel being attacked and how they do it with bots and how you, for everyone that subscribes, the bots unsubscribe. And I was like, all right, cool. So I just thought it was interesting because what we do. But
that explains a lot, though.
Yeah, so you might want to look that up.
Now I'm trying to figure out how watch hours can be subtracted. How you can go from 685 watch hours to 617. Like, what?
Interesting. So, anyway, so this article my wife sent me, I posted it on the Writers of the Future forum. I know I posted it there because, that's right. He's right here. Martin
Shoemaker.
Yeah. One of these days, I really should meet in person because he just lives up in Michigan. And he's publicly posted about how he's more than happy to offer tours of some garden thing that's up there. And I'm like, that'd be fun. But anyway, I digress. So I posted this because, Writers of the Future won't accept AI. But according to this girl, the professor said he ran her paper through an AI checker, and it said like all but 2 of the sentences were plagiarized or something like that, or were done by AI, I guess, not plagiarized, but done by AI. And she said, according to the article, she said she ran her paper through Grammarly, and that was it. So I don't think that article really passes the smell test from what I understand, because Grammarly is not, I think Grammarly can do some AI generated content, but for the most part, it's a glorified spell check or grammar check. But it's interesting because Martin, then I posted about, because I think it behooves any writer to have something like that to kind of check your grammar before you send it off. Like I've got a degree in English. I still miss things. It's not that I don't know what it is, but you know how typos are and whatnot. So,
oh yeah,
I'll run it through that.
I'm good friends with typos. I know a lot of them.
Yeah. I had a dog named Typo for a while. But I just don't really believe the girl. I don't. Now, I'm not saying she's lying. I'm saying from what I read in the article and from my own experience, I don't trust her side of the story. But if her side of the story is true, I thought that was pretty troubling. Because I'm like, that's kind of going too far. Like, that's throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But then Martin Shoemaker said that he thinks it's, you're fine to use it, but he doesn't think anyone should use Grammarly. So I really should, I suppose, message him and find out why. Because like any tool, I think it's how you use it, but like I ignore all kinds of suggestions that Grammarly gives me because they're just
Grammarly. If I've got a grammar question, believe it or not, I go to Grammar Girl's website.
Well, that's a good one. I
Because
definitely.
Minion has not only got pretty much she's got the answer to whatever question you got, but she's got a usually a good mnemonic way of kind of remembering what the rule is. So once
Well,
you learn the rule, you have an application to remember it.
well, I get that, and I've seen her website. Like I've looked at it for various things for my own teaching. I fully endorse that as a resource, but that doesn't like that's fine if you know there's a problem or you're not sure about how to do it. If you For me, Grammarly, it really is. It's a more robust grammar and spell check. That's how I use it. So, like, I ignore stuff from them all the time because I think it's like it picks up stuff that's just. I'm like, no, 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 like just no. Um, my knowledge of grammar and my understanding of grammar is good enough that I can weigh what it tells me and say yay or nay. Um, if you don't have that background, I've seen a really good argument as to why Grammarly sucks if you don't know grammar, because um, you'll only learn what Grammarly says, and that's not the end all and be all, which I agree because I ignore half of what it tells me. But it does catch things where I have a really bad habit of trying to insert an Oxford comma where it doesn't belong, um, or leaving it out when it
What?
does.
What do you mean? It doesn't belong.
It's not actually a case where you like if you have a compound subject with a simple predicate. No, switch that. You have a simple subject with a compound predicate. Um, so you have one person or thing doing two or more actions. Uh, you don't have to have a comma because you're not. It's just the wrong construct. You don't. If I say I went to the store and bought milk, I don't need a comma before that and bought milk. But I have a habit of putting it in, not because I don't know any better, because obviously I just explained it. But
Yeah, because it's like a list thing, right?
Right.
You got to set in your head that you need a comma for the list.
Right, but it's not really a. I mean, it's not. It's just not. It
Right,
work.
it's two things instead of three or whatever.
Yeah. Or you're not really combining two independent clauses. You're really just combining a compound predicate, which doesn't need the comma. So, like, I understand the grammar of it. I do, but I like something to my analytical grammar brain is not necessarily dialed up when I'm writing because I need to access that creative, intuitive side.
Yeah, you got to shut down one part to be able to be free with the other.
Right. You kind of have to dial them down. It's kind of like stereo settings. It depends on what you're trying to do, right? So that's why I think Grammarly or something like it is useful. But you also have to know the grammar ahead of time. So it's my Picasso theory. Picasso's early works are amazingly awesome and realistic.
Right.
Wildly different than what he drew in his later years or painted in his later years.
Right, because he took abstract to the extreme.
Right. But he had to know how to do
it. You can watch his progression to go from realistic to slowly.
Right. You can watch him learn. You can watch him experiment. You can all that stuff. But he had to have a solid foundation first to really be, I think, in control of what he was doing. And that's how I feel about a lot of the grammar stuff. I think you should kind of have a pretty decent grasp of it. Not that it should stop you from writing, but it should be something that you're working on if you feel like you don't have the grammar. And if you don't have the grammar, for the love of God, you need something or someone.
Well, so grammar, touching once again on the subject of communication. That's what grammar is about, right? It's making a clear communication where everybody can understand because it's the same rule for everybody. So we were talking about comic book scripts earlier, and I was saying that the comic book scripts are about communication. It's about communicating to the artist and to the reader. So part of it's for just the artist, which is what would be prose in a prose writer. And then part of it's not for the artist so much as for the audience, even though the artist's job is to convey any kind of emotions. Emotions is the wrong word, but body language, facial language to go with what is being said. So I always think of grammar and formatting and all that stuff as the same thing, because basically what it's about is communication and communicating clearly. All right, so I guess we'll take out some water paints and at least do a first layer. Well, I got the brushes out, so I don't have to chase them.
Oh my goodness. So my wife messaged me on Facebook, and so I was looking at her message, and there just happens to be a picture on Facebook from some page I don't follow. And it's Wolverine versus Apocalypse, art by Mike Mignola. Okay, Mignola, sure. But I swear
Hellboy. His name is actually Mignola.
Okay, I'll believe you. But I would swear up and down.
I believe him. If he says it's Mignola, it's Mignola.
Well, yeah, I believe him. I'll believe you too, because I wouldn't know. If you tell me it's a silent M, I would think, okay, I don't care.
Well, it's and it's the GN. It's the ñ sound. It's a Spanish word.
But it is so obviously based on Frank Frazetta's work. Like I think I've seen this, only it wasn't Wolverine and Apocalypse fighting, but this chick.
Oh, I know which picture you're talking about.
Okay.
I literally was just looking at that same picture this morning, where Apocalypse is turning. His legs are facing one way, and his top is turning toward you.
Yeah, there's a chick in front that is straight out of Frank Frazetta. I swear to God.
Well, yeah, because Frazetta has that triangle where it's one going this way, and one here. So it's like a triangle formation.
Okay, but I mean, the pose, everything about it just screams that to me. Just screams it. Which, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's rare. Well, I don't know if it's rare, but I'm nowhere near as good as you. You tend to be able like, oh yeah, it's that artist and this, like when I showed you that when I was playing around with AI art that, when it first started kind of becoming mainstream and I wanted to see what it was like and you just, so I was like, it's making it because I tell it what to make. And you're like, no, because you broke down the picture as to what parts were where. And then I started looking up those artists and I was like, well, holy shit, you're right. Which is why I would never use AI for cover art or artwork. Like I'll use it for, I don't mind it for inspiration pieces. As in, I kind of tell it what I'm kind of envisioning and then it helps me kind of focus in or narrow down some of the aspects of it. But
did you read anything about that fire at Disney World?
No.
Cinderella's castle or whatever
What about it?
burnt down.
Really?
Yeah, my wife was just showing it to me like yesterday or the day before.
Whoopsie.
She was like, Ethan Van Sciver is going to be all over this one. I guess there's more to it. That's why I was asking if you read anything about it.
Oh, this is the first I've heard about it. Yeah, there are parts of this picture that the more I look at it, some of those aspects just bother me.
So,
don't get me wrong, part of it's really cool, but part of it I'm just like...
I think it's interesting that you use him as an example because his work used to be substantially different.
Yeah.
And what he's known for, Hellboy and all that, is what you're seeing that's really got its start with that piece or that kind of piece. But he used to draw like pretty much kind of like Jim Lee and all those guys, except for that he always gave his characters bigger eyes.
Okay.
When he started simplifying stuff into shapes, that's when you start getting the look that's Hellboy, which is what you're seeing, the kind of squared off, chunkier looks.
All right.
I'm not sure if that particular picture is a cover that he did for a reissue or something, because I don't know if he was drawing for Marvel during that period.
Well, this is from 1989.
All right, so that's actually when he started developing that look, period.
Okay.
Look and see when Hellboy was created, because that was right around the time he left Marvel, right?
If you say so.
He did I think he did some Batman and Robin and stuff like that too, but that was way closer to what you would expect to see for comic book art than what he started to go into.
Huh. So there's a comment on this because I just thought this says it's, you can take it for what it's worth. I can't say I vetted any of this, but it's supposedly this is from Mike Mignola, quote. I remember exactly because it was crazy walking through Marvel one day and X-Men editor Bob Harras asked me if I wanted to draw the Wolverine annual.
Harris,
I asked who was writing it, and he told me there was no writer yet. I had and still have no interest in Wolverine, but being a smartass, rather than say no, I said, if you get Walt, is it Simonson?
Walt Simonson?
Yeah, if you get Walt Simonson to write it, and it's about Wolverine going to the Savage Land and becoming king of the cavemen, I'll do it. And I walked off and figured that was the last I'd hear of that. And the next day, Walt called me and said something like, so I guess we're doing a Wolverine book. And it's the best story I have about getting a job.
Walt Simonson drew Thor for a long time. He created Beta Ray Bill.
Someone else is saying it's very Frazetta. And I'm like, yeah, it is. I agree.
Someone else is saying? Or you're reading a comment on a blog or something?
Yeah, a comment on the post just says very Frazetta, and I agree. That's normally when I'll go through and I'll look at the comments like that just to see if anyone else is seeing what I'm seeing. You know what I mean? Like if I see that it looks like or reminds me of X, I want to see if it reminds anyone else of whatever it is to see if I'm crazy or not.
Now, I'm positive that he had drawn inspiration from Frazetta because pretty much everybody did. But I think it's mostly Frazetta in the composition. Because if Frazetta was doing it, you would have all kinds of subtle tone changes and color changes. And you would have complementary colors right next to each other inside one shape, because Frazetta was just amazing with his colors and the subtlety of color shift that you are not going to see in that picture.
Oh, I completely understand what you're saying, and yeah, I agree. Now I just kind of want to see if I can. I swear I've seen that. I'm positive I've seen that composition to some degree.
Yeah, that's a composition that Frazetta made famous.
Well, that would be why I've
Two
seen
guys
it, and why
fighting and a girl.
that's why I'm like,
Usually a
oh, I've
girl
seen this.
like crawling towards them on their knees or reaching up towards one knee or whatever. Yeah, that's very Frazetta like composition.
I'm sure psychologists have a field day with that, but
Well,
yeah.
since Frazetta's dead, who gives a shit what psychologist said? And he's been painting since what, the 20s or something like that. In those days, psychologists didn't have as much to say about stupid shit like this,
Yeah.
or weren't considered anything important.
Oh. Well, there's the Conan picture that made me think that
Going in with the sword in the ground and the skull behind it, and a girl climbing over dead bodies, or a pile of stuff to reach up at him.
no, I
Oh,
mean there's I see that, but oh no, I've lost it. Where did it go? You know how your favorite topic about how Riddick is just space Conan, and you hate that. Um,
it's not that I hate it. I just don't think it's true.
okay, that's fine.
That,
But
that's not the same thing. Like you can feel whatever you feel about it, but
oh yeah,
I've been reading
Conan the
Conan
Liberator.
since I was 15, so I know he's not the
I don't
same
know.
as Riddick.
There's just
His
the way,
motivation.
and part of it's kind of dumb because I mean, let's face it, what else he's going to do? But there's the one with the necromancers or necromongers, whatever the hell they're called, that he ends up killing their leader and he sits on their throne, and I'm like, I've seen that on a Conan cover.
Oh yeah, so somebody else used it.
Yeah, but that's where it
That
made me
seems like
start
in the
thinking
end
about it.
of all the Conan movies, right? When he's on his throne,
Yeah.
he would wear it on a heavy brow, blah blah blah. The crown of Aquilonia.
But whatever, it's just one of those things. And I'm perfectly fine saying yes, there are differences. Besides, one is fantasy and one's
Well, I
quote
mean,
science fiction.
for me, the reason that I'm like, it's not true. It's not because I like Conan and don't like Riddick, because Riddick's all right. But Conan and Riddick are different people. He's got a very, very lofty set of rules, like a code that he lives by. And Riddick doesn't. Riddick's code is to, whatever's best for Riddick. He just happens to end up being an anti-hero and saving other people along the way. Conan usually gets into what he gets into because he makes a promise to a woman.
Which should teach us a valuable lesson.
Well, I'm just saying. These are the major differences in story elements. Like, you've never seen Riddick just swear to a woman and that's why he's screwed up. I mean, he did kind of take a liking to that little girl that was trying to pretend she was a little guy.
Yeah,
So
that's
not
got all kinds of weird things to consider.
Yeah, and I'm not making any comments about all that stuff. I'm just saying that it was different than when Conan, made a promise to a woman. Usually, he was buying women baubles, and something ends up happening to the woman that he's the flavor of that story, or whatever you want to say. He always ends up, like he always ends up as part of it because of either some stupid promise to a woman or he gets too involved with a woman too quickly. And then when you listen to Robert E. Howard describe him, he's the damnedest son of a bitch that ever lived, but yet he's always kind of the protector of women and until it's an evil sorceress or whatever.
Oh.
Just totally different motivations. And Conan, actually, it's funny because when you think about Conan, you probably think of him like we were talking about the difference between a single agent and a team, right? But Conan almost always meets somebody else and learns from somebody else, and is friends with somebody else, So even in the pastiches, he's in situations for friendship, or for someone a soldier of the same cohort or something like that. It's just interesting to think of that we think of Conan as this great loner or whatever, but he's not a loner, he's a nomad. He always ends up being a part of something with somebody else. Robert E. Howard only wrote one Conan novel. Did you know that?
No.
Howard the Dragon. Yeah, all the rest of the Conan stories were short stories. I'm pretty sure that's the only novel he ever wrote, either, or two also as well. Although he created so many characters via short story, it's kind of amazing. Yeah, and the Conan novel that he wrote involves Conan's son, right? That was part of the plans for the movies, the way the progression of the movies were.
Okay.
King Conan is like his adventure is to go after his son that's kidnapped, Prince Khan. Con, not Kahn.
Khan!
Which is why I made that distinction.
Right. Had to be done. Had to be done.
Be done.
Did she poop a little?
No, my wife is saying be done because she wants to go to bed.
Ah. Well, you said it had to be done, so like, did you startle her? Did she poop a little?
No.
She's old.
No, but she had a sleeping potion earlier.
Made yesterday.
I'm
Ah.
telling you, this restaurant. My wife has made the mistake of ordering a large one, and it's like a freaking bowl. Like, it is huge. Whereas the medium ones.
I had a small tonight.
Oh, yeah, she had a small, and it was still pretty good size. Oh.
It's so fucking.
That were both luscious, I guess. Although my wife.
That's a good wife to say that shit.
Oh. So you know
You got to compliment the wife like that on her ruler.
So when we were up in Syracuse for the funeral stuff, they started drinking Fireball, the little tiny bottles of Fireball. My wife's uncle had brought a bunch of them apparently, and my wife likes Fireball, and found out later on that one of those bottles is almost 2 shots. And her uncle would walk by and be like, "Oh, hey, you dropped this," and hand her a bottle. And then she'd drink it. And not only was he just like constantly giving her these bottles of Fireball, he was also secretly taking them, like the empty ones, away. So she didn't realize how much she'd been drinking. And I'm just like, you dirty bastard. Because was that Saturday night or was it Friday night?
That was Friday night, man.
Yeah. So that was Friday, the night before the funeral. And yeah, I was a little worried that she wasn't going to want to wake up in the morning. Or when she did, she wouldn't want to go anywhere. So. Oh. The temperature is supposed to plummet tomorrow. Yes.
It's supposed to hail all night long, man.
That's just what I wanted. Because when
getting a little bit warmer over the next couple of days, I think.
Well, that's because you're always a few days behind us.
You know, we get all the shit weather.
Pretty much.
Although,
let's face it, Indiana doesn't get anything great.
We get all the shit air too because it like filters up towards the northeast corner of the United States.
Hey, you know, I had family that hailed from New Hampshire, and for the life of me, I'm just like, why the hell would you want to live there?
New Hampshire gets fucking colder than us.
Well, okay.
They got these ice castles. Well, they're, valleys and all that. So when it's cold, it's super cold. We had our heater die trying to keep up with the cold in New Hampshire. We went to the ice castles because Amanda always wanted to go. So she waited till around her birthday, which is today.
Yeah.
And we went, and it was so cold that kids were walking through bawling. It was just
wow.
So cold because you're walking through a giant ice cube in walls of giant ice cubes in really sub-zero temperatures. So,
Well, I mean, I have 2 memories from New Hampshire. One was that's where I had my first taste of Moxie, and I can't say I really enjoy that memory.
Yeah, I don't enjoy Moxie. I actually had to spend all 2 days ago, spent a good chunk of 2 days ago looking for Moxie for Amanda because she drinks it when she's sick.
Really?
Yes, that's all she wants to drink when she's sick is Moxie. But it tastes like cough medicine, so surprise. But
I guess that tracks.
But yeah, I was surprised I couldn't find it anywhere. Usually I'd be able to find it everywhere and Diet Moxie, but I went to 4 or 5 different stores before I could really find a Moxie, and I was like, holy crap.
Huh. Well, the other memory I have is we were visiting in the summer, and we went to the beach, and they were selling hot chocolate on the beach in the middle of summer. And I was like, why would you, who the hell wants to drink hot chocolate? It's 70,
It started off as regular chocolate.
Well, it's just. Then I got in the water and I quickly figured out why they sell hot chocolate in the middle of summer. I was like, oh, shit, is this cold? So that was my memory. Oh.
Been watching 1883 and 1923.
I don't know what those are.
They are the prequels to Yellowstone,
Oh, okay.
set in those years.
I mean, I know what the show is. I've never watched it. I just.
So it's really difficult for me to describe how I feel about them because
Okay.
on one hand, I really like a lot of the stuff, and on the other hand, there's a lot of morally repugnant shit.
Okay.
I mean, really, I mean, it's like kind of Game of Thronesy for westerns. Like Yellowstone is supposed to be modern day on a ranch, and all the problems that you have with ranchers, like uh, the value of livestock being down, and it's harder to make a living as a rancher and all that. And then there's a lot of kind of underhanded, seedy shit that goes on because certain ranchers are cutting corners, and Native Americans want their due, and there's a lot of stuff going on. But the main family is like, oh, let's do flowers in the attic with a western. It's like this is some fucked up shit. And if you watch it because it's a train wreck, then you might enjoy it, and that worked for me for a few seasons. But then it started going places where I'm like, yeah, I guess I don't really buy that stuff anymore. It's getting to be a harder and harder sell. So I was excited about the prequels because one of them is Harrison Ford. That's 1923. It's Harrison Ford, and I think it's Helen Mirren. And there are other cast members too. I just can't remember all of them, but those are the two main people. Like Kevin Costner is the main guy in the regular series.
Right.
And then in 1883, it's Sam Elliott is one of the main stars.
Right.
He's not playing like one of the family members, but it's like, so in 1883, it's about how they got where they are. The big thing about the series is that it's a ranch, and this ranch has been in their family for a long time, and they're willing to kill and fight and die for this ranch, right?
Okay.
And 1883 is how they got there. 1923 is how, like, not the next generation, but the generation after that uh, made it into something. But I've liked the prequels much better so far. They've got their issues. One of the big ones for me is that the in 1883 the story is being told by uh, a girl that turns 18 during the trip,
Yeah.
and she's basically sleeping with anybody she wants to, like it's the 60s. Like, yeah, that's not happening in
Oh.
1983. Plus, spoiler alert, anyone that don't want to hear, plug your ears. Um, the person telling the story dies. So how do they tell the story?
Oh, you're one of those people.
Oh no, the whole story is told from that point of view, and what kills them in the first 5 minutes of the show. It just doesn't show that it kills them until later on. So it implies that she doesn't die because she's telling the story. She doesn't write it down. There's no diary, there's no record of what she's saying. So, like, you're listening to her ghost tell a story.
Yeah, I don't get hung up on that kind of thing as much as you do, but
Well,
I do have.
because the way they presented it was, it's not a found footage thing. It's not a.
Yeah, I mean, I
There's
get
not
it.
a reason for it, and I don't buy it. It feels like
They're
it's cheating. Hey, look,
yeah.
surprise! She was dead the whole time. You didn't, we knew that the whole time, but you didn't know that the whole time. Ha ha! We pulled something over on you.
So I mean, I get that, and don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong in this instance in any way, shape, or form, especially because I haven't seen it, so I wouldn't know. I'm just saying that kind of criticism I don't have as big of a hang up on it, but it can be too much for me, I suppose. But I think if we were to plot that on a spectrum, you're just on a different end of that than I am.
Yeah,
And
because
it's
if
not
there's not a believable reason, then I'm gonna be pissed.
right. And I'm just like,
If there's a believable reason, that's a whole different story. You know what I mean? I accept it if there's like a believable reason that we are getting the story from somebody that can't possibly tell us the story. Like, for instance, if they set it up so that ghosts could talk, if they said that, even said it, implied it in a part that some people believe that ghosts can tell their story afterwards or something like that, then it's not so bad because you've already got yourself, you've already got something there that gives you the idea that it could possibly be someone dead telling the story. If it's a found footage thing, then it's found footage. So they told the story, but they died before they could get the story in their own voice to you. That's another thing. Found footage, whether it's a diary or a videotape or whatever. Of course, a videotape is not going to work in 1883, but just the way it's set up, and the way that the whole point of the show, it's like, I don't know, it's a very big letdown. But you knew it's going to happen by a certain point in time. You're kind of guessing it's going to happen, but it's just crap. That's just like what I was saying about her being this free spirit, where she's pretty much having sex with anybody she wants to, and all this other shit at 18, and her dad's a big badass Civil War guy that's literally knocked the guy that she gets married to or thinks she's married to off of a horse and gonna beat the shit out of him. But yet she can go around sleeping with anybody else and of multiple different uh, races. Just I don't know. It really intrudes on me in a story when you see political correctness get in there too. So it's just a couple of strikes against it. The story was really great until you factored in those things, which is
So,
why overall I liked it better than, well, I liked it pretty well.
so okay, like this is a leading question, but it factors into what you're saying. Um, when you're talking about, you see the political correctness crap being inserted. I think of some of that like, um, all the jokes you see on Netflix about how, if Netflix were to do a movie about Mark Zuckerberg, they would get, I don't know, a black actor to play him
Yeah,
because
you're talking the race swapping memes.
yeah, there's those, but there's also just like, God, the BBC has put out stuff about how, there would have been all kinds of Africans in England and like, 300 AD. And it's like, no, they would not have. No.
Right.
Like, could there have been some? It's possible. I mean, at some
So the
point in time,
problem the
well, I'm just
problem
saying,
for me is not that there's some. Oh, it's that they're in a respected position or a position that because I know for a fact you're talking about like the middle uh 1200s or whatever. What all the blacks were Moors, right? And they
right.
were battling against the Moors. So how would they look at you know anyone
Oh,
of that color as a respected position or a respected person? It's just really hard to buy.
well, yeah. So, but of course, the idea of you never flip that around, but they act like there was never a place that was predominantly or that was almost exclusively white. They try to pretend this, and I'm just like, no, that's not true. But then I also think about, all right, but if I'm writing a fantasy set in a comparable times like line, I have no problem. Like, I have no problem kind of making it more with some more modern sensibilities.
Okay,
But
the key word is fantasy.
okay, that's what I wanted to know.
When you're talking about 1883 and all that, it's not presented as fantasy. It's presented as historical fiction, or historical mostly.
Right.
It's
Okay. So
historical fiction because they're fictional characters, not because it's supposed to be an untruth.
well, I mean, that's one of those things, and why I really don't like getting bogged down but with as a writer, I don't want to be considered to be left wing, right wing, or anything. I just want to be able to explore the things I want to explore, and I want to write about whatever I want to write about. I don't, So it's kind of some of the stuff where I'm just like, there's there's no reason in a fantasy why you can't have more people of color if that's the way that world is set up. Now I'm not saying this like like the monstrosity that was um, whatever that Lord of the Rings thing was on Amazon, where it's like you are
As if it doesn't
ignoring,
exist anymore. The Rings of Power.
yeah, that so completely ignored the world building that Tolkien did. But whatever, that kind of bothers me. But if I'm building a world, then I have no problem using those types of characters. In fact, I find them neat. You know what I mean? Like if
So I
it's
love David Gemmell's work, and
okay,
I've read nearly all of his books. Like I've read all of his books except for the crime thrillers because
okay,
they weren't available. Now they are available, so I may end up going and getting them. But why that matters is because he wrote heroic fantasy, which is very close to sword and sorcery.
okay.
And somebody told him, I think, long about his third book, what I really like about your books is that you don't put like mud races or whatever the fuck he said in them.
Oh.
So the next book that Gemmell put out was Winter Warriors, where the main guy's a black guy.
That's actually in the novel I'm working on, the one with Umjot in it. I have been trying to come up with a term because I see kind of a division between the more subterranean races with the more not subterranean. Terranean? I don't know.
Yeah, that would be Terran, right?
Yeah.
At least according to the science fiction I read, it's Terran.
So
Terran.
So, it's like, so you have these like goblins and gnolls and stuff, which are in a lot of traditional fantasy, those are the evil races. Well, they can't be evil in this world. I mean, the evil exists, but they've had a fight over good and bad gods already. And these are the ones that are left were, on the same, technically kind of on the same side. And they're not supposed to be fighting. So saying that they're evil doesn't really work. But then at the same time, I'm trying to figure out.
Like I'm talking about my Snargy's world.
Well, kind of. I mean, there are some similarities there.
They're thought of as evil because they were the Dark Ones races, but the Dark One's only the Dark One because people thought he was the Dark One.
Well,
and because the minions that he had weren't humans, they weren't people.
Right. So there's some well, yeah. There's a Venn diagram there that overlaps quite a bit. I'll put it that way. But yeah, I've been trying to come up with a name for that division that isn't necessarily pejorative towards the goblins and the drow and all that kind of stuff. And
why isn't it pejorative?
Well, like, so
or
part
you're
of the,
just talking about like a regular name, not a nickname for the race. It's just a regular name.
Well, as a white author in particular, is calling them the dark races just sounds terrible. Like, no, can't do that. Even though most of them reside.
As long as you keep an IE off the end of it.
That
would sound pretty terrible.
Yeah, well, I'm just like, I was like, I don't like that. So I'm just trying to, I've been trying to figure out something. And part of it is, I mean, on one hand, it's the political correctness, and I recognize it as such. But on the other hand, it's also that kind of terminology has been done to death. So I'm trying to figure out something that kind of threads the needle.
Good enough excuse to change it.
Yeah. But I mean, really, that novel is kind of about, being kind of the they're not necessarily minorities, but they're the races that a lot of the other races look down on, I guess.
You read, is it Adrian Tchaikovsky?
I'm going to say no.
No, Ben Aronovich. So he writes these books called the Rivers of London series, which is basically a cop that investigates like ghosts or paranormal criminal things.
Yeah.
And it's so he's talking about some of these races that live underground.
Yeah.
And what he calls them are the whisper people. Because everything is so loud to them, they're used to quieter because of underground.
Right.
It makes a lot more sense when you read it because everything is darker, everything is quieter.
Yeah, I mean,
You don't
I
get
think it
that
makes sense.
the traffic and all that stuff. But I thought it was interesting. And when you're bringing that up, talking about how you want to distinguish subdwellers from above ground dwellers, right? Without a
Yeah, or
pejorative. These whisper people or the silent people or whatever he called them, they are, it's not a pejorative, it's a descriptive. It's not said in insult and nobody takes it in insult when somebody calls them that. There are slang insults that you're not supposed to call some people that you learn throughout the story, but I just think that's an example that you might want to think about because that's normally actually kind of the direction your thinking has led traditionally. Or traditionally, in my experience. Whether you run with it or not, we've talked about things where it's almost like that's the kind of thinking. You're not talking about dark or pale, you're talking about sticky people or,
right.
in the Revolutionary War, they commonly called redcoats lobsterbacks. Obviously, it's because of the red tails, the type of tail coats that they wore and that they were red. Is there any other thing than just up or above ground or below ground that makes them distinct?
Yeah. Most of them. Um, uh,
Oh, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to put it out.
no, most of them have way better night vision. I mean, they have to be able to see it, and whereas the other ones don't. I mean, like the humans, we have normal vision. I suppose elves might have some, like, it kind of depends. But I don't know. I mean, it's just really. I mean, because on one hand, I really am just. I'm picking the races that are traditionally the evil ones, and to me, it's kind of like the war they just fought is a lot like World War II, in that the winners, while they may be allies to win that particular conflict, are also not necessarily really friendly. Like
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
That type of thing. So like the U.S. allied with Russia, but before the end of World War II, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we dropped the atomic bomb. Was not because it, I mean, yes, it did save American lives, it saved Japanese lives too, but it absolutely.
It's not Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying overall, statistically. I mean, just the numbers.
I'm just being facetious.
But
Which is probably not something I should be facetious about.
Yeah.
Which is what
But-
keeps me getting in trouble.
you know, when they dropped that bomb, it kept Russia out of Japan, so Japan didn't get split up like Germany did. You know, and it also just told Russia, don't mess with us. Like we've done what you wished you could do, and you don't want us using it against you. You know, it was a clear signal. So, but anyway, so I kind of have this idea of that kind of dynamic between the races. And
So why don't you take a page from their playbook? Like the Axis or the Allies or whatever.
well, that's probably what I'll end up doing. I just haven't found something that I really, like sometimes it's got to be just right, man.
I don't think, I think if you call them the dark races, then you might have a problem. But if you call them the dark allies, you know what I mean? I don't think that's going to be the same, especially in fantasy fiction. There's a long tradition of darkness versus dark skin.
Oh,
Because it's white versus dark, good versus evil is the common trope. It is the most common trope. So I don't think that's a huge concern
That might be
as far as like racial crap, because even like anyone that reads Tolkien, they read of the dark races, the dark elves, the dark whatever.
yeah.
They're not going to think that they're black just because they're dark. Drow are the black skinned or dark skinned elves. They don't call them anything that would be confused. And they don't call them dark elves, right? Or they don't call them, whatever, the dark race. They might call them dark elves.
No, but you gave me an idea. Oh,
That's what I was trying to do. So.
I don't think it's going to work. Bastards.
Why?
No, that's. I don't. I don't know. I don't know. So, when you were talking like Axis, or you said dark allies,
Right.
and then I was thinking shadow allies. But Babylon 5 had allies of the shadows.
Yeah, that's not the same, though. Of course, I mean, that might be more close to what you were thinking, but that's not the same as what you were calling them. Or you could do, instead of, like, shadow is another just relative term for that. You instead of saying dark this, you could say allies of darkness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the darkness doesn't become dark elf, dark race. It becomes allies in darkness. It has a whole different connotation. It might not be as short or quick or truncated or whatever, but it might have just as much merit or more, because it doesn't. or I might just be full of shit. Because really, I mean, it's just a matter of what sounds right, right? What rolls
Right.
off your tongue right, what feels right, or whatever. If you worry about if someone's going to pick it apart, yes, someone's going to pick it apart.
Yeah, I know.
That's the nature of people. But darkness is less likely to be picked apart than dark in that particular instance. But I don't think that's a big deal, really. I just think that it's more of, I think your concern with it being more of a trope is dead on, that there's so much dark this and dark that in fantasy anyway.
Yeah.
But that's because that's what the main trope of fantasy is light versus dark. You wouldn't go back through and change all Robert Jordan stuff because Tolkien used, darkness so much. And so, to your earlier point that we didn't really discuss, you mentioned and we just let drop.
Oh, sorry.
No. This is more towards crediting what you're saying. There's no reason that you couldn't add more variety as far as racial or gender or whatever to fantasy. I've never had a problem with that. The problem is that trying to remove what's already there or make one group of people not exist because you want to make another group of people more prominent.
Right.
I want to say it was Tad Williams. I might be wrong, but I want to say it was that in one of maybe his Otherworld books or something like that.
Yeah.
And the Otherworld books were more of a digital worlds instead of fantasy worlds.
Okay.
But in one of them, I was reading, I'm pretty sure, about an African that it was like a heroic fiction character, a Conan-ish character that was basically an African. It was a black character with like starting out having dreams, going to a shaman and presenting it as if it were the fantasy.
Yeah.
And I have nothing wrong with that. I would be interested in reading that kind of stuff. Uh, I don't want to mispronounce anybody's name, but there's a Writers of the Future judge that writes. I think she calls it African futurism.
Yeah.
But when I read it, it didn't feel like it was African futurism as much as just a different point of view. You know what I mean? Like there's scientists in Africa too. Their colleges are different, their schools are different because they are different people. Their infrastructures are different. Their monetary sources are different, and all that. So that was pretty interesting to think about. And I hear all the time, "Oh, you don't want to read any straight white fiction anymore, or whatever." But they're really still writing that. They're just writing it with different colorized characters. It's when you start to see them writing it, and I say them, I'm not meaning a specific group, I'm meaning anyone who's writing. It's when you start to see them writing it so that it's actually about a different culture, when you feel like it's a different culture, when you feel like it's not just colorized, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like different colorized. It's like when the old black and white movies, they put color in them. There's something that's not quite true about it.
Right.
And I guess that's what I'm getting at. That's what it feels like. It doesn't feel as true. I want to say her name's Nanendi, and it's something that starts with an O. I really liked your work. But it didn't feel like oh, this is black, so it's right. It just felt like this is a story from a different person's point of view, a different point of view than you're used to. And to me, that was the novelty. It was like saying, this is something that you're not accustomed to seeing, and we're not going to put it in words you're accustomed to using, because those aren't the words that they would use. So it's not the actual color of the characters or whatever. It's still the voice of the characters, but it's also the milieu. And I hear people talk about different milieus all the time and how they're world building and they love world building and all this other stuff. And when it comes right down to it, it's still the same. It's still the same Second World building. It's just somebody else's different way of making up words or whatever. They don't have different traditions, different. I don't know. It all feels like it's just colorized, you know.
Well,
It doesn't feel like it's depicting something different. It feels like that somebody's put a wash on it to feel like it's something different. I don't know.
there's a. I think I've currently overcomplicated something, but I was trying to come up with kind of a magic system, right? And I did not want the magic system. I didn't want it to be not like elemental magic or whatever. Anyway. So I was coming up with this secondary world thing, and I was thinking about zodiacs, and so I did some research on zodiacs, and I didn't know, like, there's a band, a very narrow band of the sky that the zodiac is based on.
I can't hear what you're saying.
Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
It wasn't you. It was something going around behind me.
Oh, well, life goes on. I get it.
Trying to pass it.
But the zodiac is based off of this narrow band in our sky, which I was like, okay, I didn't know that. And then I got to thinking, what if you had if you're on a different planet, you're going to have a different, like if you have something like a zodiac, it's going to be different. And then I started thinking about, what if you had multiple moons? Your zodiac isn't based on the stars per se; it's based on the moons. And it kind of evolved around this, so that it's taking concepts that I had seen before, but really, you're talking about setting as that is the key to everything in that. And it requires a lot of different customs.
Well, but they're all white people customs. They're all based on Greek traditions.
Well, the traditional one.
What is the zodiac in Africa?
No, I get it. I'm
not trying to cut you down or whatever, but that's what I'm saying is that it feels like it's just colorized. It's tinted to be different, but it's tinted. It's the same thing, just tinted a different color.
Okay. What it would be a complete. Okay.
It's only different because of the moons or whatever. It's still based on the Greek mythology. Because the zodiac is built on Greek mythology, right?
Well, there's also the Chinese calendar, and it's
Different gods, different zodiacs.
I know. So it's not
different story.
That's why if you have a different planet with a different system, with several moons, which would happen quite a bit, you would have a zodiac, not necessarily like normally the zodiac is on fixed positions, but you might have a zodiac actually based off of designs based on their orbits. That's a really kind of a neat thing. Because there could be all kinds of different combinations, but they would be on a schedule. You could mathematically predict when they're going to happen, and therefore you could have a zodiac based off of moons and the positions they form. Yeah. And that means you have to have a whole different set of gods. And you would have to think about how does that affect, because most gods, or a lot of gods are kind of tied towards seasons, but if it's a lunar thing, you're not going to have, they won't necessarily line up at the same seasons. That might require a lot of math.
I think it's the whole theory of if it's truly alien, you would never be able to understand it anyway.
Well, that's true.
You wouldn't be able to really describe it if it's truly alien because you're using terms that aren't alien.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but at some point you realize that that's the way the story is, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna have to translate it to the readership.
Yep.
But how do you make it feel authentic? And I guess that's what my problem is that all this stuff that we're talking about feels like just playing with something that already exists, you know? It's not that you couldn't come up with a totally interesting story in that setting or tweaking what's already existed because that's what you're talking about. I think that that's perfectly possible, but it's just it doesn't feel like it's another race because maybe it doesn't feel like it's another race telling the story. Like I don't know. I'm just trying to figure it out, figure it out in my head what makes sense, but just seems like it's still a potato chip, just a different brand. Whereas what I was talking about from that other author didn't feel like that to me because it was believably different traditions, I guess. And all I'm doing. That's all I'm doing is trying to identify what made it feel that way to me.
Oh goodness. Okay. Have you read anything from Octavia Butler?
Yeah. I quite like Wild Orchid.
Okay.
I didn't so much like, was it the first book of the Kindred?
Okay.
And that's probably because it was questioning religion in such a way that I just am not interested in that for myself.
I mean, I think she was pretty good at writing from a different perspective. So I don't know. I mean,
Again, what resources was she pulling on?
I don't know.
How much Octavia Butler have you read? Like, I'm not trying to start something. I'm trying to figure out an answer, and you may not be trying to figure out that answer, but the resources that I read that she was pulling on are the same kind of resources. It's African fiction, slave fiction, from the slave's point of view, obviously. So and a black woman writing about it. For those that don't know who Octavia Butler is,
I don't know. I mean, I don't. I would go with. I mean, I don't know what she's Octavia Butler. She's freaking amazing. I don't know. I'm just saying, what you're asking.
Well, I know Wild Orchid was about two African demigods, shaman type figures,
right?
That kind of were in conflict throughout a long period of time. And part of that time was one of the characters came over on a slave boat, and the other one could hop bodies and came over as a slave lord, right?
Right.
And that's basically kind of the setup for Wild Orchid. But it is, it's if not for the African slave experience and the African shamanistic beliefs, which I'm not privy to, you know what I mean? Like, I can only get what I learned from a book or from what somebody else observed or whatever. Whereas Octavia Butler probably had it directly from people who lived it and believed these things. Like, so you're drawing on a pool of knowledge, or she was drawing on a pool of knowledge that maybe a lot of African Americans had readily available, right?
Okay.
But not a lot of white people did. So she brought us into that experience through the fantasy and science fiction realm. And she did it brilliantly, I agree. But that's what she was doing. And that's why it was so unique. Nobody was doing that. And then what's it, Okafor? I can't. I'm hacking it. I know I'm hacking it. She's one of the Writers of the Future judges. I read some of her short stories, and I thought they were very interesting and unique. Like, one of them was a robot that ended up befriending a human, even though they were supposed to be guarding it, like a robot guard that would kill them if they got out of line or something like that. But through music, they made a connection. And we could have told that story, but we would have never achieved it the way she did, because it was a different kind of music, a different feel for the music, a different importance to the type of music, you know? And she was able to express that through the character, or the interaction between the character and the robot, or I think that's the value. Like, if you're, and what I'm talking about is, instead of race swapping, or instead of trying to hit those politically correct notes, I didn't feel that was the agenda in those stories. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I felt like they were creating unique and unexpressed characters, which made them that much more interesting to me, because I didn't feel like it was another character that was already created, that was just swapped out to, make somebody else more prominent. It was a story that was told about that type of people, that tribe, that whatever. And it felt totally self-contained to me like that. It felt very authentic. And I think that's what's missing from a lot of the politically correct stories, is that that sense of authenticity. Like, when you read a story about Superman's son being gay or whatever, like, it's not about the fact that he's gay. It's about something that, Superman's never going to be gay, so we're just going to create his son gay. Well, why don't we just create a character that is what he is? Make him a believable character, you know? Give him a voice that we haven't heard before instead
that
of
does.
changing a voice that we've already heard into something that's agenda driven.
Well, to me, that shows a lack of confidence that you can sell your vision. Like,
Or a lack of true vision.
well, I'm saying, like, if I make a character who's gay, and everyone knows that from the beginning, they won't ever buy it. Like, that's the mindset. So they take something that is selling.
Right, it's not a surprise. It's not like,
And-
oh, you knew him as this, but now.
Yeah, and that's tokenism. And I'm sorry, it just like, okay, so there's a character that I've been working with, and part of it is he can shapeshift. That's really like that's his thing. And when I started thinking about that, I'm like, okay, would he necessarily be straight? Because you can be whatever you want if you can just change your form.
I read a Dungeons and Dragons book about a guy that could, or a character that could shapeshift like that, from male to female at will.
Well,
It seems like that's becoming a little bit more prominent in like the TV stuff, like what was it, Gen V?
yeah,
That's
but see, this is an extension of, okay, the character needs to be able to shapeshift for what the type of story is. Okay, so it starts with that. And then you realize, okay, if he can shapeshift, from that, I get the idea, what, other than your, I guess, preference, but I mean, if you can change your whole body, because literally they're changing race, like they're changing, like, I'm not talking like skin tone race. I'm talking, he can change, like Beast Boy change to anything. And I'm like, what? That would really alter the perception of sex, because I mean, you literally can be one or the other, however you choose or however you feel, and I can see that being a push from the left, but that's not how I'm getting there. I'm getting there from, this is a technology that's in the universe. Character has the technology and does this. So,
well, like I was saying, I read that in D&D for a long time ago. Except it was more exploring the idea that you could switch from a male to a female, but
I don't want my story to be about exploring
either. That. It was like an ogre or something like that could do it.
I just wanted to, it made sense that he could do it or she could do it. It could do whatever. And it's not that I'm trying to write a story about doing that. It's just technically his character, might be a true. It's not even bisexual. It's like just hedonist would probably be the best way to put it, because he could be.
A what?
And I mean, if you can change form into any race and in the universe and all that, and any sex, no sex, all
Well, then he
hermaphroditic.
would have to be kind of by nature, naturally asexual, right?
What? Yeah, it would be more like for him at least, it'd be more like, this is a tool you use, actually. But it's just, and again, the book or the idea for the storyline is so very much not about doing like exploring those things, but it makes sense that character like backstory, head canon for the author to know about him. And I'm like, but is that, I can easily see people saying, oh, that's that, that transgender agenda. It's like, well, it's not, but I can understand how you might read it that way. And it's one of those things where it's like, some people, I guess people read into it whatever they want, but I can definitely see it leaves itself wide open. But I don't think it's tokenism, because it was never about that. It was simply that's an extension of the character decisions that mattered. And so this aspect of his personality is a manifestation that comes from the story's design, not from some message I'm trying to just foist on people. And that's, I think, it's the kind of character.
That's why Tolkien said that he hated allegory. Tolkien said he famously said he hated allegory in all of its forms.
Yeah. But
that's probably why, because people probably were reading into stuff way more than he was intending for stuff to be.
Rich, I gotta go, man. It's getting late. I'm about to fall asleep. I'm sorry. I just, like we're talking and the discussion is great. I just am having a hard time staying awake. So I'm going to let you go.
Well, I was just about to say something about calling it quits for the night, because when I did Unjot, I did 2 sessions anyway.
Okay.
So this would be the first pass, and I got to let it dry before I ruin it.
All right.
So yeah, we'll just call it there.
Awesome.
So thanks everybody for watching. Good night. God bless. Much love.
Peace.